welcome to another episode of Purpose Today. I'm your host, Dr. April Dobson, and I'm very excited to talk with you today about how you can pivot with purpose. 5 keys to help you to redefine your career. And with these 5 keys that we're going to talk about, it's going to equip you to be able to shift your career in 2026. So if you want strategies to help you to pivot and do that successfully, you want to stay right here for this Power Pack episode. Now, I want you to think about something before I go to the sponsor messages. I want you to think about whether or not you would continue to wear something that no longer fits you. Would you wear a garment or an outfit from 30 years ago that no longer fits? And I know for some of you, you might be in your 30s. So let me just maybe say from 15 years ago. Well, why wouldn't you do that? Well, you wouldn't do that because you wouldn't be properly representing yourself because you're wearing something that doesn't fit. You would also be very uncomfortable because if something is too small, it's definitely constricting. And you wouldn't be able to have the opportunity to do some of the things that you would want to do just by the conclusions that people are drawing from what they're seeing, since you're not properly representing yourself. And so your career is the same way. Why would you stay in a career that no longer fits? Well, there are a lot of people who do that, and they do that because they don't know how to clearly shift and clearly pivot from where they are. And in today's episode, I'm going to give you some clear strategies that will allow you to do just that. So if you want to be successful in shifting in your career in 2026 and you have the desire to do something different, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these sponsor messages. And I look forward to sharing these keys with you that will help you to successfully shift and pivot in your career in 2026. This episode of Purpose Today is brought to you in part by Purpose Today Global and the Purpose Professionals community. If you have a desire to shift and pivot your career, then the Purpose Professionals community is for you. If you also have the desire to network and communicate and connect with like-minded professionals, or you have a desire to continue to develop, or you have a desire to realign your business to align with your purpose, join the Purpose Professionals community. The link for the Purpose Professionals community is available in the YouTube chat and has moved from the school location. Well, we're going to jump right back into our all new episode, Pivot with Purpose, 5 Keys to Redefine Your Career. And so if you're ready to shift your career in 2026, pull out a notepad and pen or your iPad or whatever you desire to take notes on, because I know that the information that I'm going to share is going to be helpful for you. So we're going to jump right into it, and I want you to stay tuned as we jump into these 5 tools. So we're going to get started with the first tool and the first strategy. So you want to be very specific in assessing where you are. It is important for you to evaluate and take inventory. What do you like about your current career? What are the things that give you joy? What are the things that make you feel fulfilled about where you are in your career? That is very important. You want to make sure that you identify in what ways you're aligned with your purpose, and you want to also identify the ways that you know that you're being an impact to people, the ways that you are making a difference, and really what makes you feel fulfilled in your current role or your current career. So I think those things are very important because you do want to Identify what you have an appreciation for. So that is the first key step in positioning yourself to shift and to pivot in 2026. So I think that once you've clearly identified that and you've clearly articulated that, then you can go on to the second step, but you want to make sure that you're very reflective and that you have it written down and you've clearly identified all of the ways that you're appreciating what you're doing, because that's going to be important. The second one is you want to fully identify how you are aligned and how you are misaligned with your purpose, with what brings you fulfillment and enjoyment. It's important for you to do that, because if you don't stop to fully identify all of the ways that you're aligned and the ways that you're misaligned, then you could go into a new opportunity in 2026 and still feel unfulfilled. So you want to be very clear on the areas that are aligned for you, and you want to be clear on what is misaligned. I think in this step, as you're writing the list of things, it can be important to also get some clarity, for people who have success in their careers and that they are aligned with purpose. They're doing things that make them fulfill, things that bring them enjoyment. You want to actually have conversations. This might also be a good time for you to have a 360 interview to get insight from people who you've previously worked with, or people maybe who you're working with now, to ask them what they see, what they've observed in the skills that you have that you're really good at, what you do very well, and what you're doing, because this can maybe give you other considerations. It might also be a good idea to ask them, based on what they've seen in you, what do they think that you'll be good at that you're not currently doing, or what do they think that you could do more of that they see that's a strength for you. And this is not saying that you should give someone else the responsibility. It's just giving you extra insight from those who know you, those who have observed the excellence in what you do, those who have observed what you have as strengths, and maybe even areas of opportunity. So I think it's very important to have that insight to help you to continue to grow, because you always want to be in a position that you're growing, that you are continuing to develop yourself. And there's a lot of different ways that you can grow throughout your career. So that is very crucial. Now, another thing that you want to do is you want to decide your desired career goal. And I do see often, just from my expertise, that people have taken what they've done historically, what they're doing now. They take their experience and they say, oh, I've been doing this for 10 years or 15 years or however much time they've been in that particular industry or that career field or the role that they're in. And they just look for the next promotion opportunity from what they're doing, rather than looking at what is it that brings me enjoyment? What is it that aligns with my purpose? What is it that will not require that someone motivate me to be successful in my role and show up and be my best and do my best, right? Sometimes people just believe and have the misconception that just because they have a degree that's related to their career field, or just because they've been doing something for an extended period of time, that they need to keep doing that. And that is not necessarily the case. I want you to make sure that you're very reflective and that you're very introspective. I am a person of faith, And because I'm a woman of faith, I believe that it's very important to pray about what you're going to do, pray about your career, pray about every decision that you make in life. So I do believe that, as Proverbs says in chapter 3 and verse 5 and verse 6, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not to your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. I know that God can direct our paths. And I think that, sometimes as people, you can make the conclusion that certain things don't require direction and guidance from God, and that is not true. He should be guiding us in all of our decisions and in all of our affairs. And so it's important to make sure that you are, praying about the decisions that you're making. But when you're deciding on your desired career goal, that should be your starting place. And so you want to think about also, what is it that you want to do on a daily basis? And it's not necessarily identifying what you want to do on a daily basis by a job title or by an industry. You want to think about, what are the types of tasks do you ideally see yourself doing? What would fulfill your purpose and what would bring you joy, right? And then you want to think about, what kind of problems do you want to solve on a day-to-day basis? What is it that you have a deep desire to bring solutions for? What do you naturally see yourself addressing, right? These are some questions that you want to ask yourself when you're making those decisions. And you want to also think about, who do you want to help? What are the types of situations, and who are the people? Who is the population of people? Do you want to help people who are experiencing homelessness? Do you want to help people who have a desire to transition from a role that is very technical in nature, that only requires that they handle their own workload, into doing something that formally is a leadership role and using the technical expertise that they have to serve in leadership? Who do you want to help, right? And what kind of solutions do you want to bring? What kind of problems do you want to help solve? These are the types of things that you should be thinking about. And as you're thinking about these things, you want to put together a list, right? Because there's a lot of different ways that you can make an impact. There's a lot of different ways that you can solve problems around you, in your community, in your country, in your state, around the world. And so you really want to think about those things. And after you've done that, you want to start doing some research, doing some reflection, doing some evaluation to see, what types of roles can you do that in, right? And so that is the third step. And I want to get into the next step as well. And the next one is, once you've gone through all of these first three steps, then the next step is to begin to update and modify your job search materials and update your profiles. And specifically, when I say your profiles, any profiles that you are utilizing for professional networking, for seeking opportunities, you want to update those. I know for people who work in the federal government and want to remain in the federal government, USA Jobs is the platform that has the majority of federal positions. And so you may need to update your USA Jobs profile, to change your search criteria, to upload your resume once you've made the revisions to your resume. And you want to also update your LinkedIn profile, ensuring that you update your summary, your headline, that you're updating, if necessary, your LinkedIn profile photo. if necessary, updating your cover photo, but you specifically want to also make sure that you are updating your experience to ensure that you've highlighted the expertise and the accomplishments that you have related to your prior roles. I see a big mistake that people are making when they want to shift in their career and make a pivot. Instead of ensuring that they're highlighting the accomplishments and the solutions that they've brought in positions that correlate to where they desire to go, the direction that they desire to go in that align with their goals, they're making the mistake and highlighting what they've done in the past, not highlighting where they're going, not highlighting the solutions that they've brought to organizations. So it's very important that you pause and really identify what within the experience that you have and the education that you have and the skill sets that you have, what is related to the direction that you're heading in. Not where you've been, but the direction that you've heading in. And when you identify what is needed for the direction that you're heading in, then you want to go back first and add, before you delete anything off of your resume, you want to go and add insight for the achievements and the experience and the skills that you already have that relate to where you're going. And then you can go back and revise what you have to ensure that you're highlighting where you desire to go and not just telling people where you've been. Because if you just tell people what you've done and you aren't showing the value that you brought to organizations, you're not showing the problems that you've solved, and you're not showing what is relevant for where you're going, that is not going to support your shift in your career pivot. So it's very important that you do that and that you make that adjustment. Once you've made all of those adjustments, now you can go back and ensure that you are highlighting it in the best way and that you are removing what is not essential for the direction that you're heading in. Now, you do want to keep in mind that often employers and hiring officials and recruiters are not going to always list absolutely everything that's needed for a role that they're advertising. They're going to usually highlight the most essential parts. So that is another part of your research in, where you're going to ensure that you identify what is essential and you're not removing something that you have expertise in from your resume or from your LinkedIn profile. So that is very important. Now, another key that I want to highlight as I'm talking about LinkedIn profiles, there have been changes to the LinkedIn algorithm. And so if you have expertise and it is expertise that you need for your desired outcome, your desired career goal, your desired business that you're planning to launch, then you need to ensure that that remains in your profile. And if you have expertise that you haven't put in your profile, then you want to ensure that you put it there if it's relevant to where you desire to go. And the reason that it's essential that you do that is because the new LinkedIn algorithm is not highlighting or making you as visible when you're putting something in your profile. For instance, if you're posting on your LinkedIn profile an article, or you're making a post and it doesn't show that you have the expertise for what you're posting about, you're going to have very low visibility. So that's all I'm going to say about that. Just ensure that you have updated your profile and all of the relevant profiles and your resume to reflect the accomplishments and expertise and skills that are related to where you're going and not simply what you've done. You don't want to make that mistake. And then the fifth thing is you want to apply. You want to apply and then review your applications and ensure that you're networking and you're continuing to network. Now, I just brought up number 5, but I think I need to mention, I know that I need to mention something that is relevant for both number 4 and for number 5. So, in your process of applying and in your process of making updates and updating your profile for LinkedIn, you are going to need to do your due diligence with research. And I know research is not included in what I shared, but you want to make sure that you are researching. You want to do your due diligence to conduct research, thorough research, to ensure that you are aware of all of the relevant aspects of the opportunities that you are applying for. If you can talk to people and do informational interviews to gain insight, because this is a pivot, right? The whole focus of today's podcast episode is talking about tools and approaches and strategies that you can use to shift in 2026 effectively. And so if you want to be effective in your pivot, you need to ensure that you are researching to ensure that before you apply for an opportunity, it aligns with your purpose and it aligns with what you listed in number 1 and number 2, right? To ensure that you are going to be fulfilled, that you are going to align with purpose. And as you're transitioning into something that is new, having informational interviews will be very helpful for you in getting insight on perspectives from people who have already been successful in the types of opportunities that you're going to be seeking. You want to ensure that you're having these informational interviews, because if you do have information gaps, or if you have blind spots as it relates to something that you're trying to transition into, you can reduce those gaps and you can eliminate blind spots. What you don't want to do is you don't want to exert all of the time, all of the energy, all of the effort in transitioning into a new career and then making the transition and then discovering, wow, this doesn't align. It doesn't align with my purpose. I don't feel fulfilled. So you want to ensure that you have as much information as possible. You don't want to do analysis paralysis, where you're doing so much research that you don't take action, but you want to do your due diligence to ensure that you are equipped with the knowledge that's necessary and the wisdom to make the right decisions, right? And again, if you go back to what I said earlier about praying about your decisions, that can help you to avoid making a mistake of pivoting into something that you should not be pivoting into. I also want to share that as you begin to ask questions and do informational interviews, while informational interviews are not for the purpose of asking for a job, they are for asking for information, asking the right questions. You want to ensure that in your research and in your communication with individuals, if you can find out whether or not they know of any opportunities that are related to the goals that you have for your career. That's very important. And then part of number 5 is networking. And I shared the importance of doing your research. And I also shared how important it is to apply after you've done due diligence, right? But I want to share why this networking component is important and different avenues to networking as well. So this networking component is very important. And when you're networking, I want you to also network to help others, because you might, in the process, as you're networking, discover that there are other people who want to make a pivot too. So as you know and discover different opportunities, share those with people, right? I want to make sure that I say that. It's so important that you're giving and that you're adding value to others, right? Now, in your networking, there are a lot of different approaches to networking. You want to network in person and online. This is very important. Now, while I am talking about networking, let me share something that is important. And if you already know this, then please give this insight to other people who you know if you believe that they're not aware. When you are networking on LinkedIn and you are making communication with someone who you have not communicated with previously, and you are sending them an invite to connect, and you know that your intention is to ask them to meet or something of that nature, don't send them an invite to connect with them without telling them why you're trying to connect with them. And then after they accept your connection, then ask them for a job opportunity. That is wrong. Additionally, don't send them an invite to connect and then right after they accept your connection, try to solicit or sell them something. If that is your intent, tell them in your message to connect so they will know whether or not they want to accept it or not. That is just a quick plug. Now, I want to say that when you're reaching out to people on LinkedIn and you are going to ask a question, see if you can find the answer before you ask them a question and come equipped with what you have found and see if they would be willing to share insight on if there's anything else that you should be doing or if there's a different approach. But with your networking as it relates to doing the informational interviews and asking about potential opportunities, start with people who you have already developed a relationship with. And that is really important because people are going to more than likely be willing to share insight on vacancies and opportunities with people who they have a relationship with. And I want to say again, when you know about opportunities or when you're doing your research and you come along, you come upon vacancies and you know people who that would be a good fit for, who are seeking opportunities, send it to them. Kindness is free, right? So it's good to always be kind, be helpful, and, give whenever you can and you have the ability to do so. So another thing that you can do with LinkedIn is you can look at your connections and see with your connections if anyone is hiring from your connections. That is another thing that you can do as well. And as we're talking about, helping people and connecting people, again, if you see that your connections are hiring and you know that there are people who who would be a good fit, share the information. Or if you're not completely sure on if someone is interested or would be a good fit, consider reposting the post. So these are just some strategies that you can utilize to help you to be successful and help you to shift and to pivot within 2026. So assess where you are, identify what you appreciate about the role that you're in. Then you want to identify how you're aligned or misaligned. This is very important to ensure that you don't go into another position that's not aligned, making sure that you're clear on what aligns with your purpose, what doesn't align with your purpose. You want to identify, what could you do that you would feel fulfilled, that aligns with your purpose. Third, you want to decide your desired career goal. What is it that you want to do? And then fourth, you want to go through, update your job search materials and your LinkedIn profile and other relevant profiles. And then fifth, you want to take the opportunity to apply, review, and network. And you want to repeat 4 and 5 throughout the process. You want to go back, and as you see that it's necessary for you to update your LinkedIn profile, your other profiles, and your resume, do that. And then you want to make sure that you are continuing to apply, continuing to review your applications, and also review your email that you use that is associated with your application and network. And these are ongoing things. And with the fourth and fifth thing, again, you want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence with research and properly researching. Now, these tools were specifically for job seekers. And if you are a professional who wants to make a shift, you want to make a career pivot, I encourage you to implement these strategies that we've talked about. If you put a question in the chat and I didn't have an opportunity to answer it orally, or I didn't answer it in the chat, I do apologize. Feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn or send an email. If you know that you're someone who wants to pivot, then you have to be intentional about that desire to pivot. I do appreciate you watching this new episode, Pivot with Purpose, 5 Keys to Redefine Your Career. These strategies are really going to help you to shift in 2026. Now, if you know that you want to pivot and you want someone to assist you in that process, you feel you need a coach, because sometimes you need a coach, right? A mentor or a coach to help you to do just that. So if you feel that you need to pivot, you're not really quite sure how to make that transition. I gave these keys, but you feel like you want someone to come alongside you and just help you, or help you with a specific plan for you, or someone who you can, be accountable to, then I encourage you to consider to register for the From Unfulfilled to Unstoppable Purpose-Driven Career Pivot Masterclass, or email us at admin@purposetoday.com. You can also schedule a consultation with me to talk specifically about what it is that you're desiring, where you'd like to be. And if you're not fully clear, but you just know that you need to pivot because you're unfulfilled, or you know that you're not aligned with your purpose, schedule a consultation. I'll also drop that link in the chat for you all to use that to schedule a consultation. I believe that you owe it to yourself to align with your purpose. You owe it to yourself to do what you love. And if something is no longer fitting you, then you need to make the shift. And I do appreciate all of you for taking time to watch this episode of Purpose Today with Dr. April Dobson. I'm very excited about our next episode. I know on this episode I focused on professionals, but on the next episode I'm going to share information for organizational leaders. And I know there may be times that organizational leaders have to make a decision to make some changes and to restructure or realign positions, or to, make those organizational changes that might be a little bit difficult to make. And it happens in organizations. And so I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about some strategies in the next episode that organizational leaders can do to ensure that they are leading with purpose and aligning their organizations purposefully in 2026. We also have some other fantastic episodes that are coming up, and I want you to take advantage of all of the new episodes that are coming up over the next couple months. I'm going to talk about just a few of those. I am going to have a Q&A episode where I just answer questions related to career planning and management, career pivots, making career decisions. So if you want to take part in that and you have some questions that you want to be answered in that, please drop those in the chat or send me a message on LinkedIn or on admin at Purpose Today. And if you don't want to miss any of the episodes that are coming up, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the subscribe button. If there has been something that's been valuable to you today, put it in the chat. I want to hear your feedback, or send an email to admin@purposetoday.com. One of the episodes that's coming up in the future is Breakthrough Moments with Purpose, the journey of resilience and self-discovery. Another episode that is coming up on Purpose Today, in addition to what I've already talked about, is being able to elevate your leadership and harnessing the power of purpose and mindset. I also am excited to bring back some prior guests who have been on prior episodes of Purpose Today. So if you have some favorites who you've seen on Purpose Today, who you would love to see back, drop those in the chat or send an email or message me on LinkedIn. Thank you again for tuning in to this episode of Purpose Today. It's been such a joy to engage with you all on today. I appreciate everyone who has, put your comments and your questions in the chat. And I thank you so much for watching. And until next time, I encourage you to remain purposeful today and every day. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode